Welcome to the interview show. This is Scott Wood, your host. Right now I have the Moon King standing right in front of me on Robson Street. Hi, Moon King.
Hello. My name's Daniel.
Could you tell me a bit about your band?
Yeah, there's two of us. Myself, Maddy Wilde. Yeah. What else do you want to know?
Well, I'm glad you ask. All right, so as you said, the core of Moon King is Daniel and Maddy, your childhood friend. So I'd love you to tell me an embarrassing story from your childhoods involving both of you.
Well, I'm not going to embarrass Maddy, but
Come on, kids do adorable / embarrassing things all the time.
I don't know. I think
Well, you could embarrass yourself.
yeah, I could definitely embarrass myself if I told you, like, I don't know. When I was like maybe 12, I definitely had this sort of like Eminem looking type of thing going on, and like I would say maybe that's not embarrassing at all, actually.
All right, so you guys both grew up in downtown Toronto, which is pretty rare. It's rare to find somebody who grew up in Vancouver's city center. I would imagine it's also pretty rare to find somebody who has grown up in the city center of Toronto. Can you talk a little bit about that upbringing?
It's a little strange, like, being from the center of a city, especially when, like, I think most of my friends at this point are from elsewhere. Most of the people in Toronto, the young people, especially like in bands or doing art, everybody's from somewhere else. Myself, my brother, and Maddy all sort of grew up at the center of this kind of thing. Like Lee's Palace was like a half a block away, the Bloor Cinema, all these sort of like cultural like landmarks, I suppose. Sonic Boom, which is the best record store in Toronto. So all this stuff was just sort of within arm's reach. I think it seemed a little more realistic to like think about, oh yeah, well, we're gonna go and like play at Lee's Palace, like no problem. It's just right there. And I think we got to do some sort of weird inner city kid stuff when we were like in high school. Like they used to, they would go to like the Bloor Cinema and like everybody would just be like smoking weed in the theater and like watching crazy like psych movies late at night. And I feel pretty lucky that like we were able to have this sort of like downtown sort of scuzzy teenage experience. I feel like this is sort of like teenage debauchery kind of got itself out of the way when we were really young. So then we can sort of focus on actually making things and doing things that are important.
show. This is Scott Wood, your host. You just heard Only Child. That's by a band called Moon King. I have the Moon King here with me. His name's Daniel. I'd love him to talk a bit about this track.
Yeah, Only Child, I think, is the first song that most people have heard by this band. It's definitely one of my favorite ones to play. I think a lot of people think it's about the brother thing with me and Airick, but it's actually more to do with our grandmother who has dementia and Alzheimer's, and we haven't ever had a conversation with in our entire lives. And it just has this, it's like talking about Soma in 1984 and this sort of like dream escape which people go into. She never has come out of it. She's never come out of it. So not a happy song. I don't write a lot of happy songs. I don't know if that's very apparent, but
Have you ever thought of playing her that track?
that's a really interesting idea. I've never thought about doing that, but that's actually a cool idea, and I might do that.
Daniel, your dad was in a folk band. Did you think that you were destined to be a musician because of that upbringing?
No, definitely not. I was completely unaware of pop music. Like, our folk kind of background is definitely was in the background.
Both you and your brother are in bands. Would your dad be weirded out if you came to him and said, "Dad, I think I need to be an accountant"?
I don't think they would have been very happy about that. I definitely think my parents are definitely happy that I'm doing music, and like, you know, they know it's hard, and like I know it's hard, and everybody is sort of just trying really, really hard to make this work. It's not the easiest job in the world at all. Being an accountant is like, it takes a completely different set of skills. I don't have those skills. I never learned them.
Can you tell me what Spiral Beach was?
Oh, that was our old band with me and Maddie, and then my brother and Dorian, who is in Austria. Yeah, we had a band. Our first 2 shows in Vancouver were with that band for sure. So
That band sadly is no longer. Can you talk about being a musician and surviving a band death?
it's definitely really weird, especially because Spiral Beach was our first band. Like, I'd never played in another band, and I did that for 7 years until I was, I guess, 21.
So that means that you started when you were barely a teenager.
Yeah, I think I started maybe the first year of high school. I started that band. It sort of became this thing by the end of it that it's like, well, like, is this all you have? Like, is this your life's project, is just to do this one thing you've been doing since you were like 13 or 14 years old? And I think we all sort of were having this realization. We were like, okay, we just have to do something else.
What does it take to start another band?
For me, it was really hard. I think my brother jumped right into, making Doldrums is his band, and he jumped right into making electronic music and like completely changed his process of writing. And for me, I didn't really, all the songs we had written up until that point, we had written together. And I spent maybe 2 years just sort of like bumming around. Like, I didn't have an apartment or anything. I just sort of wandered and like stayed in a few different cities, met a lot of really good people, and sort of like was just lost for a while. And I didn't really understand what I wanted to do. And then after a while, I was like, well, even with all this kind of like bullshit and like bad vibes, I'm still writing. Like, I can't stop writing. So these things that I was just writing down sort of worked themselves into songs, and then I like taught myself to play guitar and write chords underneath them. And after I got back to Toronto, I just sort of like, I guess it made sense to just keep playing with Maddie because we were both feeling the same way. We both didn't know what to do, so we were like, okay, let's get back in the car and just drive around and play music for people.
The Interview Show. This is Scott Wood, your host. You just heard Sleeping in My Car by a band called Moon King. I have Daniel here from the band. We're standing on Robson Street at night in Vancouver. There's a gang of policemen behind us. I'd love it, Daniel, if you could talk a bit about this song.
Sleeping in My Car is a tour song that anybody who's been on tour or been in a band or just really just traveled around a lot will sort of relate to. I mean, it can be taken literally, but... Oh, the bus?
When you do interviews outside, it just seems like sometimes the universe is ganging up on you. And right now, I'm talking about the bus you can hear behind us. It's just stopped and making a weird noise.
Well, I'll tell you about our vehicle-related song while this bus is here. I'll just wait a sec. It's like going so slowly. Okay. Anyway, Sleeping in My Car could be taken totally literally as a song about, having nowhere to stay. But I think it's more about just sort of being on tour and having this sort of desperate, losing touch with everything feeling, which, I've been on tour for 2 months right now, and I'm on tour another month and a half. And I'm not very good at keeping in touch with people at all. And you sort of lose that whole... any semblance of having like a friend circle or like a regular crew or something like that. It's all gone, and it's not a happy song either.
All right, so as you said, the core of Moon King is Daniel and Maddy, your childhood friend. So how did you convince her to join this project?
I don't know if we ever really even talked about it specifically. We just sort of I just started showing her the songs. I was showing them to a few different people. Like my brother, obviously, we'd still been working on stuff, and we still do. Carmen, who now plays in this band Diana, that was also with Austra, and then Dorian, who's with Austra. So, there's a little bit of a community going on. I was just showing the songs to people, and obviously Maddy, I've been working with her for so long, it's very easy for me to be like, it goes like this, and she's like, okay, I'll do this then. And it just fits really well. So we sing harmonies together most of the time, and I think it shows that we've been doing that for a long time. Just that our voices sort of sound similar. Maddy's great, and everything we've done together, whether it's this band or old bands or, even just hanging out, it's always very relaxed. I think having somebody else who you can rely on when you're doing this is the most important thing, because it relieves a lot of the pressure. And as far as actually doing the writing and producing, I do that, but without Maddy, this wouldn't be a band. You know what I mean? I think you need 2 people to make a band, at least 2 people, but you need 2 people. I think it's very important to have somebody in your band that you trust that's just they can be your friend and your sort of working partner as well. I don't even want to get into if there was a romantic thing in there as well. That makes it even harder, and I'm really happy that has never been an issue or anything. Usually when we work together on a song, I'll sort of go in, show her the song on a guitar or a piano or something, and then we'll figure out harmonies on top of that. And then usually the lyrics are actually we sort of just say whatever for a long time. And usually even at the shows, I'm sort of just making things up. Sometimes it's stuff that I remembered that I said from other shows, and then that sort of piles up, and eventually there's something semblance of a finished song there, and if I can remember what it is, I'll write it down, and that becomes the song.
Wow, that's a really interesting way of writing lyrics.
It's partially lazy and partially spontaneous, which is I think the best way to write anything.
The Interview Show. This is Scott Wood, your host. You just heard Appel by a band called Moon King. I've got Daniel from the band here with me. He has the messiest hair of somebody I've interviewed for a long time.
Thank you. That's a compliment, I think.
There is no styling involved here, but I would love you to talk a bit about that track.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Appel is, I think we just wanted to write something really big sounding. I like the idea of this sort of like arena, like stadium sound and playing it for people in like a tiny club or in a basement. I really want everything to be saturated, and then you can hear details in it if you turn it up loud enough that weren't there. Appel is just sort of like us stretching. It's like flexing, you know. It's our flexing song.
You guys have put out 2 EPs so far. Can I get you to talk about being a young band and finding your own sound?
I think having short releases is probably the best thing that like a young band can do. You don't want to distract people with this sort of like, oh yeah, well we've got 3 or 4 records before you might have heard of, but probably not. This is just like focus on a couple of songs and make sure that they're the best songs you've ever written. And those should be the first songs that somebody hears instead of like your 3 back catalog albums or something like that.
Daniel, you also tour with your brother's band. The band is called Doldrums. Can you describe Doldrums for the audience?
Yeah, the difference, and it largely has to do with the difference in our personalities as well, but like Moon King songs and just the general attitude of our band is very like almost like militaristic. Like we have things are done in like a certain way, and it's like everything is just kind of a little planned out, and we just try to hit everything really hard. And Doldrums is very freeform, very improvised, and changes in every way whenever possible. So that's sort of the difference between the two.
Daniel, you're the front man of Moon King. Your brother is the front man of Doldrums. Are brothers in bands competitive? And if so, how?
Yeah, definitely competitive. Not competitive in a musical sense at all, but I mean, you know, we fight like any brothers do, and it just happens to be on stage sometimes in public. But I think competition is healthy, especially between family members. It's sort of like we're, like I said before, we're all trying really hard. And I think everybody in my family understands that it's important to just, when you go up there and like you play for people, or you're in a studio working, or you're by yourself writing something, you have to put everything you have into it and make it the best thing you've ever done, and you can't make any compromises. So this is where the competition sort of comes into play. It's like when you have 2 people who are like about the same age with sort of the same type of I guess like we work in the same type of field or whatever. We just have different ideas of how it should be done sometimes, but they're so close that it becomes frustrating.
I heard that the weirdest song you ever wrote was about Jupiter and Mars having sex.
Yeah, that actually became a Doldrums song called Anomaly. Yeah, I had this sort of weird chorusy thing about like Jupiter and Mercury, this sort of like interplanetary sex kind of porn thing.
Can you sing a bit for us?
No, I can't sing it for you.
Are you sure you can't sing any of it?
Yeah, I can't sing any of it.
Can you tell us some of the lyrics?
No, honestly, I would just embarrass myself further by telling you the lyrics.
Sometimes embarrassing yourself a little bit is entertaining to listen to.
I'll just do it on stage.
At the end of the show, I like the guest to pick one of their tracks and talk a bit about it as I bring it up. So, Daniel, Moon King, I would love you to talk about a song.
Let's play this song called Dream Trap, which is on Obsession 2. It's the only thing I think I've written, which is basically just like an instrumental. And then right at the very, very, very end, Mike Halachuk from Fucked Up, who we work with, just suggested like, oh, you just like put some vocals on this. And so we just wrote something, with me and Maddie just wrote something in the studio, like recorded it right away, and that became probably my favorite song that we've done. It's definitely a little different, like there's a lot more texture stuff going on it. My brother does some kind of, it's hard to explain, but this sort of like digital feedback through his tractor controller. The melody is all this thing that I had on a little voice recorder, that I recorded when I was in Vienna, just like wandering around at like 5 or 6 in the morning. I got locked out of the place I was staying and just sort of like wandered around in the street like singing to myself for a while, and then had this sort of loop going and looped it over and over and recorded it in this old subway station there. So it was like had all this really nice reverb on it. When I played that back, I was like, oh cool, like this is like an entire song, melody, no lyrics, let's just make this an instrumental song, and recorded it. And there's this sort of Frankenstein version, which you're going to hear now.
All right, so we're going to listen to Dream Trap. That's by a band called Moon King off the Obsession 2 LP. Daniel, thank you very much for being on my show.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, the last thing I'd love you to do is say, hi, my name's Daniel. I'm in a band called Moon King, and you're listening to The Interview Show.
Hi, my name's Daniel. I play in Moon King. You're listening to The Interview Show.
How about another one? And at the end you can say, sometimes I make sad music, but that doesn't mean I'm not an interesting fellow.
Yeah, okay, all right.